Hi everyone, it's Gary Nicholson here for the Mountain Weather Information Service. This is your planning outlook on Friday the 12th of April. There's not a huge amount changing in the weather pattern as we move towards Easter. We've got east or southeasterly winds that will prevail. A generally dry story, particularly across the northern half of the British Isles. Some complications developing as we head through next week as low pressure to the south tries to develop a few showers. Temperatures, though, as we move towards the Easter period, are likely to rise. Let's have a look at those temperatures, and this is a chart I showed you on Tuesday, and it's at 925 millibars. Now that's representative of 800 or 900 metres, so we're about Munro level, and it's representative of the tops in England and Wales as well. Again, apologise for the faint background of the British Isles. Hopefully you can make something out. It's just a general map of the UK behind there. Temperatures then over this weekend on the tops are around or just below freezing across eastern regions. They'll lift during the day across western areas to be a few degrees above freezing point, and then will fall again overnight. There'll be further frost in the valleys and the glens as well. And that sequence is more or less going to repeat over a few days into the start of the new week. Eastern mountains in Scotland are more likely just to stay just below freezing point all the way through the day, lifting a degree or so above across most western regions. Onwards then for a few days next week, and gradually you'll get less cold air starting to come up from the south, and with time quite a bit warmer conditions are trying to develop. It's a long time before it gets anywhere near Scotland though, because you're still being fed by a cold easterly pattern here, so very little changing in terms of temperatures across the Highlands. But as we go onwards toward the Easter weekend, eventually you'll see how the warmer values, the warmer colours, start to encroach further northwards across the British Isles from the south-east. If all goes to plan, we could be seeing some very warm conditions into the Easter weekend, but a bit of a long way off at the moment just to nail all the colours to that one at this stage. Some complexity to go on before we get there. Let's deal with the synoptic charts for the next few days. High pressure is toward the northeast, as it has been more or less all this week, and looks like it will be for much of next week as well. Fronts over the Atlantic are being held at bay, so we're not seeing any weather systems really coming in at this stage. It's a story of being a rather chilly wind, and that wind quite strong and gusty around some of the western regions, being forced over the hills, so through some of the passes and even down some lower slopes, gusty winds will be around. Bear in mind that wind chill then if you're exposed. We'll have a good amount of sunshine though across most western mountains, always a bit more in the way of cloud towards the east. By Sunday, those same fronts out toward the west are still around, being held across the western side of Ireland. It might just mean that there's more in the way of high cloud spilling in across the British Isles ahead of that, but it stays dry across the board, across the mountains, maybe just more in the way of cloud overall for Sunday compared to Saturday, and again that chilly feel where exposed to that east or southeasterly wind. Very little changing in the overall pattern into the start of the new week. Again, low pressure is away toward the west. Fronts aren't making any inroads, so it stays dry. The risk of low cloud coming into the eastern side of the Highlands, perhaps onto the Pennines as well, with a slightly damper southeasterly flow, but most mountains should be free of cloud, and toward the west, extensively clear with sunshine again. That wind looks a bit stronger, with the risk of even gales in places, once again gusty through the passes and to some lower slopes. Subtle changes into Tuesday, some indications of low pressure just shuffling its way towards northern France. A lot to play for over the next 4 or 5 days before we get the absolute detail of that. On the whole though, it looks as though most of the mountain regions stay dry and away from any weather fronts, so it's just that risk of some low cloud coming in off the North Sea onto eastern hills again, but western mountains will stay in the clear and dry conditions. And that's the chart suggested for Wednesday as well. There might be some spits and spots of dampness coming onto eastern hills with low cloud feeding in off the North Sea, but with that easterly flow, it's always best out towards the west. Now the complications towards Easter all depend on what happens to low pressure out towards our southwest, and in the middle of the week, generally the low is connected to a large-scale upper trough that is over the North Atlantic. But what's likely to happen is that becomes separated, and one part of that low moves off towards Spain and Portugal. And once that separates, there's greater complexity in terms of how the computer models handle things. Essentially, high pressure is still over Scandinavia, and our weather pattern is an east or southeasterly. You can trace back the isobars, and it's back towards the central Mediterranean. So there's that gradual lift of temperature as we move forwards. But the presence of low pressure somewhere around northern Spain and Biscay does present some uncertainty, and if that starts to drift a bit further northwards as we head towards Easter, it brings the scope of some showers being generated, and that mostly focused on England and Wales. Basically, Scotland is still nearer to the centre of high pressure and has a greater chance of staying dry. It may be that the high stays in charge and most of the country into the Easter weekend still stays essentially dry, but I'd always just be watching at the moment at least for that low to the south having some role to play and trying to generate a few April showers. Warmer temperatures by day, greater chance of getting those showers maybe just going in a slightly more unstable atmosphere. I think the suggestion for now is we just need to look another couple of days down the line, see how the computer models handle things for the next couple of days before we absolutely firm up on guaranteeing a good spell of weather or a poorer spell of weather toward the Easter weekend. The consensus at the moment is a fairly optimistic one, with temperatures rising and the generally dry theme continuing, but I think the weather machine often knows when there's a holiday weekend coming, because it's that time when things do start to become quite complicated in the atmosphere. You can stay up to date with all our forecasts updated every single day on the website. Follow us on social media as well. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.